Hi, I'm Chris Brookfield. I live in Bellingham, Washington. Um, what I do is try to use um, ideas of networks to promote human empowerment. And I do that by starting companies. I do that by helping other people design movements. Currently designing with collaborators some of the dynamics and structures of Salmon Nation. And I just have a view that when you empower everyday people in everyday places, they come up with the most magical, ingenious inventions and make their own lives better. One of the things I find striking about Salmon Nation is that for most of its length, almost 3,000 miles, it's basically blue, green, and brown and white. So there's always water, there's always trees, and nearly always there's snow-capped mountains. And so that backdrop is remarkably consistent from California to the North Slope of Alaska. And what I see is that as you get to the smaller watersheds, which I've been calling edges, you have really independent-minded people. And some of those people are indigenous people. Some of those people are basically pioneers, white pioneers, but they're all very far from the everyday reality that people see in San Francisco or Vancouver or Seattle. And what I see is that people in the edges of Salmon Nation have already changed how they look at the world and have been living remarkably sustainable lifestyles. And so what I see in Salmon Nation is an incredible resource of how people have already adapted and adjusted to living in a post-climate change world. One of the things I got to learn spending enormous amounts of time in rural India, rural Peru, and rural Mexico was that actually the out-of-the-way places had some of the most noticeable vibrancy. So extremely healthy, happy people living very unique lives in unique cultural settings. One of the miracles of human diversity is that diversity is entire. So people, the way they live is actually a record of themselves in their diversity. And almost nobody was looking out to the periphery and asking, what are people already doing? Okay. And so it's just really intuitive for me to say, hey, what happens if we are humble and admit that we don't know what to do, and instead go look and watch what other people are doing? That's one of the dynamics that's inside of Salmon Nation, is this idea that people who've already learned to live with less money, learn to live with less petroleum, learn to live with very difficult transportation, are already living in unique and very locally defined cultures, have already in some cases found ways to restructure their civil life in ways that are much more resilient in the face of climate change. Yes, I do actually think there are plenty of solutions to climate change. There's actually many, many, many of them. And the real challenge is how to identify what particular path works for you where you are. So that, I think that's absolutely true. And lots of people have suggested that there are plenty of solutions to alternative energy, to agriculture, etc. The real challenge is how do we implement them uh, in local places according to local conditions. And in my experience, they happen much more from the mindset of what works, what is open, and what can be shared. And if you're in the mindset of, oh, this works, oh, this is great, this works, this is awesome, you're much more likely to have a way to creatively apply that to a further need. And the way that we have set up the economy for at least 100 or 200 years is that almost all the creativity happens in the wilds. And then someone from the formal system sees something working. It could be something, the way a midwife works with a mother. It could be the way an informal gardener works with their plants. It could be the way an artist in a First Nation expresses their art. But it really works for people. And the way our economy's been set up is so that the formal parts of the system reach down and take it. They take that innovation, oftentimes without knowing that they're taking it. And then they put that innovation into the formal system, and it makes money, it creates property, it creates a set of rights, trademarks, patents. It takes what in Silicon Valley they call intellectual property. But all of that intellectual property had to have started somewhere. And the common myth is that that intellectual property started in an individual's head. But that doesn't seem to be true at all. It seems to be much more true that the inventor noticed something that already existed in the world and simply brought it forward. So as an investor, when I was doing professional investing, what I was really doing was looking below the line of the formal system into the wildness, looking expressly for ideas that really worked, and then bringing them into the formal system, commercializing them, adding capital, adding structure, and ultimately making money with them. In Salmon Nation, I'm still doing the same things, and I think we're all doing some of this stuff. The big departure in Salmon Nation is, I think because we have this vibrant group of ravens who are representing the wild, they're representing the informal, the domestic, the feminine, the indigenous. In Salmon Nation, we hope that the actual authors of the idea, the artist, the writer, the midwife, can actually participate and benefit as their innovation is incorporated into a more formal setting. In what we're doing in Salmon Nation and the structure of Salmon Nation is hoping that we can actually give not just voice and story to the originators of the ideas, but we can also share with them the benefits, the financial benefits, the power benefits, the connectivity benefits that flow from their ideas. One of the beauties of the concept is that Salmon Nation already exists in the minds of people here, and so it has everything in it. One of the things that we've done is used American legal forms to try to actually give ownership, not like a hand waving ownership, but an actual true beneficial ownership of Salmon Nation to the bioregion itself. So the beneficiary of any financial capital that is created within Salmon Nation will be stored as capital for the bioregion. If we're able to create health and vitality in Salmon Nation, the owners of that will be Salmon Nation itself. So the people, the animals, the geography of Salmon Nation. That's the idea. I think it's a pretty cool idea. And so the first idea of confluence is just helping to matchmake between communities so that we can share what works and to begin to accelerate the process of a regenerative integration across the bioregion, where one community may freely and openly share what they know about herring roe, and another community may free and openly share what they know about wheat. And all of a sudden we discover that in the sharing of the ideas, as a whole, the small communities of Salmon Nation are implementing more and more local production, more and more local economy, and are sharing their vibrancy. And you keep moving through the bioregion, what you find out is actually people are doing things incredibly well. There just is not a lot of connective tissue between these small places. So that's one part of confluence, is doing the creative work of kind of matchmaking and helping small communities to implement ideas that originated in other communities in Salmon Nation. And we want to be a place for creative people who have who are motivated in ways that are different than the mass economy. So we haven't made capital the centerpiece of what we're doing. Over time, I think confluence will raise and deploy some capital. Just to be honest, like when I'm talking about capital, I'm talking about billions of dollars, many, many billions. I'm not talking about $1 million here and $1 million there. Ultimately, I know that the bioregion itself, a vibrant culture, and the health of the region, if that's successful, it will attract enormous amounts of capital. And it will kind of be up to all of us to try to figure out, how we want to play with that. And clearly COVID is making obvious and real to just about anybody who's looking how precarious, what a state of precarity American economy was. With 33 million people unemployed in a month, that's a lot of precariousness. Most people only have cash for 3 or 4 weeks. That's very precarious. Supply chains were very precarious. So I think that people are seeing much more clearly how precarious the existing system was. That's a lot of people. That might, out of 330 million people in America, that might be 200 million who understand how vulnerable the Americans have been. On the other hand, a smaller group of people, I think, is now understanding in a emotional, intuitive way what whole systems are all about and what holistic thinking is all about. So many of the problems can't be solved as single problems. You can't solve COVID just by solving the biology, because now COVID is economic. You can't solve the economics without solving the biology. So these things are integrated. We're seeing how important looking at whole systems and the health of whole systems are. And many, many people are coming to their own awareness that the whole system of late stage American capitalism is a precarious place, and people are looking for new answers. And I think Salmon Nation presents a new focal point, a new place for people to engage, but there's others popping up everywhere. Nobody in my circles of venture capital or technology wanted to hear about holistic solutions, and now everybody does.